Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and hello, everybody. Well, tomorrow at midday, Donald J. Trump swears in as the 45th President of the United States of America. And I have to tell you that I am very excited about it. I'm excited about being there. I'm excited about the party that I'm going to tonight that's got 500 people coming to it, and we've got Eurosceptics from Europe, and we've got Republicans who were thrilled with Brexit coming to it as well. But it's only fair to say that also in this city there are quite a few people lining up to protest, because he did upset a few people during what was a very controversial campaign. So the atmosphere here in DC is building. We're told that between supporters and protesters, there could be nearly 1 million people here tomorrow for around about midday for his swearing in. Now, I know him. I supported him. I know that was controversial. But I genuinely believe this man has the makings to be a great president. My question tonight is, what do you think? Do you think Trump has got what it takes? He's promised to bring jobs back to America. He's promised to bring investment back to America. He's promised to cut illegal immigration by possibly building, if you remember, a big, beautiful wall. Now, whether he's going to build the wall or a big fence, we don't know. But the point is, Trump has made some very big promises. Can he keep those promises? He even said day one as president, which he counts as next Monday after the weekend celebrations, he will do massive things on his first day. I think Trump's got what it takes. I think he's going to be not just a great president, but a great friend to our country too. But I want to know, after this controversial campaign, I want to know what you think. So to get involved, call me on 0345 60 60 973. You can text me on 84850. You can tweet me on @LBC, but don't forget the hashtag Farage on LBC. And you can watch it live on Facebook, which more and more of you are doing by going to LBC's Facebook page. So, will Trump be a good president? I say he will. I want to hear what you've got to say. And I'm going to go immediately to Jesse in Bangor. Jesse, has Trump got what it takes in your view?
Yes, I do, Nigel. I think he will, as you said before, he will see to the immigration. I think, that he will be a good president. The only thing that I disagree with him is that he seems to be against what we're all calling the climate change. I think that we do need to take this into perspective that there is a dramatic change in our environment, and I think that perhaps you will put this over to him, that there is an urgency that we do need to keep that in in perspective. I also admire you. I've been a UKIP supporter for the past couple of years. I voted to leave the EU, and like yourself, I find it very offensive that we're all fascist or whatever. I actually have a niece and nephew who are half Nigerian, and their father was a doctor. He came over to Northern Ireland, and but as I say, we do need to get out of the EU. And,
Jesse, the abuse. The name calling that I've had over the last few years has been extraordinary. In fact, Richard Littlejohn, who does his Daily Mail column, said a couple of months ago it was difficult to know who the most vilified person was in Western politics. Was it Nigel Farage or was it Donald Trump? So, you're quite right. I have been called everything. But there is an argument, Jesse, that says that actually it was Brexit, it was the surprise of Brexit that inspired the Trump campaign, inspired the Republican activists, and said to voters in the Midwest, do you know what? If we actually go out there and vote, we can make a difference. I take your points, Jesse, on immigration. I think it's very interesting to see how many Hispanics voted for Trump, particularly in Florida. People that have come here legally are very upset by the sheer number of illegals in the country. And on climate change, well, he's in a minority by saying that climate change has nothing to do with man's emissions. But regardless of that, I think what we all have to remember is if we're really worried about CO2 emissions, it's India and China we need to be really worried about, because they're building several new coal-fired power stations every single week. But, Jesse, overall, you've got a favourable view, and I thank you for the call. I wonder what George in Tottenham thinks. George, is Trump going to be a good president?
Nigel, it's a pleasure to speak to you.
Hello, George.
If you carry on like this, I'm going to start voting for UKIP. But anyway, I think he's going to be a fantastic president. I think he's going to stir up the world. I mean, all these previous presidents haven't done anything. They haven't sorted out the Palestinian problem. They haven't sorted out the Cypriot problem, where the Turks have invaded Cyprus, and no one's done anything about that. I mean, it's just, he's going to shake up the world, and I've got some great hopes for this man.
Well, he certainly, as far as the Middle East and other parts are concerned, he will be a strong ally of Israel. He's made that absolutely clear already. In terms of foreign wars, George, I mean, this is a guy who instinctively is not interventionist, so I think we'll see fewer American troops engaged in battles in the Middle East and elsewhere. Is he going to stir up the world? Yes, he is. And I tell you where he is going to stir up the world. It's a place called Brussels. It's a place called the European Union. If you listen to a man called Ted Malloch, who it looks like is the favourite to become the American ambassador in Brussels, clearly this is a change of American policy after one that's been in place for somewhere between 50 and 60 years. The USA has supported the building of the European Union. It's supported Britain being a part of it. Don't forget Obama coming and telling us we should stay a part of it. Outside, we'd be at the back of the line. And it's pretty clear that Trump loves Europe. He loves European countries, but he doesn't like the European Union. So, George, he is going to stir it up. And if Trump was to effectively begin the end of the European Union, would that be a good thing or a bad thing in your view?
I think that would be quite a good thing, because at least some people will get their sovereignty back. And, you know, I mean, the smaller countries, they need the bigger countries to guide them. But at the end of the day, he is going to stir up everything. And I just feel very confident in the man. I mean, it's a breath of fresh air.
No, George, thank you. Well, we got two callers there who think Trump's going to be not just great, fantastic, George in Tottenham said. I'm sure there are some of you that don't feel the same way. I wonder what Mark in Birmingham thinks. Mark, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you very much for getting us out of the EU, or doing your best to get us out of the EU. I know you're still going through the process at the moment. You know, without you, it wouldn't have been possible. So thank you very much for doing that for us. The other thing I'd like to say is that I think that Trump will be a great president. I think basically he's going to improve Russians' relations with Putin, which I think that Clinton and Obama have made particularly bad. And obviously any improvement of relations with Putin is going to make the world a more stable place. I don't believe the allegations about the hacking. I think that was the other side just trying to put things about. And I also think that basically when he gets into power, he says he's going to give us good business deals. I think he will, and that's what we need when we come out of Brexit.
Well, you're certainly right. There is no question that this Trump administration is going to offer a trade deal to the United Kingdom, and that it will be, I'm sure, a comprehensive one, in that it won't just be goods, it'll be financial services as well. The slight difficulty I've got is that whilst it was great news to hear this morning from Liam Fox that he's now talking to 12 countries around the world that want to have deals with the EU, the government are making it clear we won't be able to sign up to any of this, including America, until we've left the European Union, which looks like being in March 2019. So I rather think there are some opportunities that we could be losing here, Mark. But listen, you know, you're another one who thinks Trump's going to be a good thing. I was told everybody hated him. Where are you? Call me, 0345 60 60 973. And next we go to Ben in Arizona, USA. Ben, has Trump got what it takes?
Nigel, not only does he have what it takes for the United States, he has what it takes for the world. And I'm going to tell you why, because for the first time in maybe our recent history, we have a conservative here in the United States that's willing to stand up against the liberals, to stand up against mainstream media, and to stand up against the salacious attacks like what occurred last week. And we haven't had that in a long time.
No, Ben, you're absolutely right. And he doesn't just stand up to the establishment liberal media, he actually ignores them. He refused to take CNN's question last week at a press conference. He said, no, you're fake news. Ben, I'd say the whole campaign has been unbelievable. I mean, I get the feeling that at the start of it, someone gave him the rule book for how you run presidential elections, and he tore it up, threw it away, did it his own way, did it, of course, using huge amounts of social media, and had a lot of support, interestingly, on many talk radio stations across the USA. But the traditional media hated them, and I think he reciprocated. Ben, thank you. Your texts and tweets coming in. Trump is a patriotic businessman who doesn't suffer fools. He's well used to doing deals and will be a great president. Since the election, $1 trillion has been added to share prices in the USA. Jobs are already staying in the USA. Yep, Trump's doing well. Nigel, I think Trump will be a fantastic breath of fresh air. That's from Richard in Exeter. And should we become the next, probably last, 51st state of the USA? And that comes from Dave. No, Dave, I don't want us to be the 51st state of America. I want us to have a good relationship with America. I want us to trade with America, work with America on security issues, be friends with each other, but never be afraid to criticise each other. We didn't vote for Brexit to become the 51st state of the USA. Of that, I'm certain. Well, look, I'm getting worried, folks, because so far, absolutely every text and tweet and Facebook message and phone call has said that Trump is going to be a great president. I think he's going to be a great president. And it's lovely to hear these voices, but the point of the show is so that you can come and have a go at me. So call me. Let me know that I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively, live here from Washington, D.C. It is now 7:15.
Humbly and gratefully accept your nomination for the presidency of the United States.
Tomorrow, midday in Washington, D.C., Donald J. Trump becomes the 45th president of the United States of America. It has been a very highly controversial campaign, but I think he's got the makings of a great president. But what I want to know is what you think. Look how good he is. He's not even president yet, and already big companies like Ford are announcing jobs and investment in this country. So I think he's going to be great, but I need to hear the opposing view. Up until the break, absolutely every one of you that messaged in or phoned in agreed with me, and that can't be right. I've got some Facebook messages here. Marion Walter says, I'd rather be the 51st state of America than stay in the EU. We have so much in common with the USA. Maybe we do, Marion, but it's not what I want. But I do want to leave the EU. Jamie Mills says, none of your opponents or critics have the guts to phone in. Oh, come on, of course they do. And Carol Miles, we've got one. I think he's going to be a shameful president. He's just a little boy playing a game. And our first caller is Gary in Blackburn. Gary, are you another one of these callers who thinks Trump's going to be fantastic?
Nigel, I think that Donald Trump's going to be an unmitigated disaster. I think the man shows little political nous. He's never held political office. He's a multiple bankrupt, for God's sake. He seems to treat women like a piece of meat. He just spouts populist sound bites that are designed to get people on side. He's already backtracked on some of the things, like, if I'm president, I will have Hillary Clinton arrested. Of course, none of that happened when he won the vote. I think he's a clown. I think he's going to be useless. And I think you, sir, have lost the plot by so openly backing him. I think that you're in danger of making yourself look a bit of a fool.
Well, I'm constantly in danger, Gary, of looking a bit of a fool, of course. But I certainly couldn't have backed Hillary, who represented the establishment, who supported the very European Union project that we'd just mercifully voted to leave. In fact, she wanted to extend that model across much of the Western world. Look, I get the points, Gary, that, he did say things in the campaign that many found to be offensive. I get that. But as far as him backtracking on policy, look, he's decided he doesn't want to prosecute Hillary. He doesn't want to put her in prison. You could argue he's showing his softer side. He's been at least magnanimous in victory. What I do think, Gary, I mean, see what you think, but already jobs and money are coming back to America. They're the people in the Midwest that voted him into office. Wouldn't you agree with me? He's going to bring jobs back to this country.
He might bring a few jobs back, Nigel, but he might also ostracise and alienate America to lots of places in the world. The man seems gung-ho. I'm bothered that he might set off a nuclear... I'm bothered he might lean on a red button without realising it and set off a nuclear war. I think he's a clown. I think he's no place in public office. And I genuinely think... I kind of expect better of somebody like yourself than to blindly follow such a fool.
Well, my feeling, Gary, is that we needed change in the Western world, and this effectively is the leader of the Western world who is going to change the direction that America has been going in. And, of course, don't forget that the president on his own doesn't run everything. The president appoints people. And if you look at the kind of people that he's given the big offices of state to, we've got two Marine generals, one Army general, we've got successful self-made billionaires. We've got people, and you're quite right to say, we've got people who've never held elected office before. You are right, Gary, in saying this, but actually, look what career politicians have done for the West. They've let us down terribly. They failed. It was time for a change, and I would say to you, Gary, whatever you think of Trump and the way that he goes about things, maybe have a bit of faith in the people that he's appointed. Surely some of those appointments, Gary, must have even impressed you.
Well, Nigel, I hope you're right. I fear that you're not, but it remains to be seen as we have 4 years, or possibly 8 years, God forbid, of the Trump presidency. Do you not think there's a danger that he might walk away from it, that he's a big boy who likes big toys, and now that he's actually got the office, that it might be a bit much for him and he might kind of walk away from it? Do you not think he might get impeached?
I tell you what, Gary, I thought that I had a high work ethic. This guy is just off the scale. Do you know, in the last week of that campaign, and I went to see him just 3 days after his victory, and in the last week of that campaign, he was doing up to 6 big public rallies every day. I say big, I mean 15, 20,000 people. He has got the strength of an ox. He's got a huge personality. I mean, I feel like an introvert when I'm talking to him. No, I don't see him, Gary, as a quitter. I think he's taken this job. I think he'll stick with it through thick and thin. It won't all be easy going. Of course it won't. But no, Gary, listen, let's see what happens. We maybe have this phone call again at some point in the future. I wonder what Danny in Croydon thinks. Danny, is the world a better place with Donald J. Trump?
I don't think so, no. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, tell me why, yeah.
Well, I think at this point we have no choice but to hope for the best, because, otherwise we'd just be depressed all the time. But quite frankly, his running mate, for one, scares me. I'm not going to swear on the radio. Scares me quite a lot. Like Pence is coming from Indiana. Apparently he managed to make it illegal by technicality for homosexuals to marry in Indiana just because he messed with the paperwork. And I'm kind of worried about that going national, for one.
Well, I mean, do you think that Trump is just isn't competent? Is that what you're saying?
See, the whole time during the election, he kept saying all these outrageous things. And first I thought it was I thought that was an act for a lot of it, because basically he didn't have to pay to campaign because he got free media because he said all these outrageous things. And I thought that's a fantastic strategy. And I thought there's no way he can possibly be like that. That's just, I'm sorry, that's a cartoon. Only a cartoon would talk like that. And then I was kind of, after he got elected, he was saying, no, I'm not going to press charges against Hillary. And now after talking to Obama, now I'm going to keep Obamacare or something like it anyway. And I'm thinking, okay, now he's backtracking, so I'm hoping that it was an act. And now that he's elected, he's not that crazy. But who can say? Now he's still tweeting stuff all the time, but then it could also be a strategy, because he tweets all this outrageous things about, oh my God, the celebrity said this about me, and that's what gets in the media rather than other things that are potentially sneaking in.
Danny, you make a very good point. He is unconventional in everything that he does, and I'm sure there are people all around him saying, please, Donald, will you stop tweeting at 3 o'clock in the morning? Will you stop picking fights with Hollywood stars? You don't need to do this. My feeling is he's 70 years old. He's made his own way in the world. I don't think anything's going to change, Danny, and you may find it disconcerting. You may find it shocking, but maybe this is the new normal. At least it's going to be in America for the next 4 years. And Danny, thank you for your call. Facebook messages piling in. Barry Pratt says, he is great for veterans and the armed forces. Shame the rest of our leaders aren't. John Anthony says, I see the EU is toning down its rhetoric about Brexit negotiations. Trump has been highly critical of the European Union. He's got them running scared. Long may he reign. Peter Smith says, he would make a brilliant Prime Minister. He is straightforward, honest, and he's for ordinary people. And Andy says, I think things can only get better in the UK and America. Oh dear, Andy, things can only get better. Tony Blair's theme tune of 1997. That worries me greatly. I wonder what Milan in Watford thinks. Milan, has Trump got what it takes?
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So what do you think about Donald?
Well, I think he's led a fantastic campaign. Let's all not get that wrong. Yeah, he's certainly been on the Palladium stage, and I think that's where he belongs, really. Do you think he has the qualities of a president? Do you think him and Obama next to each other, it's chalk and cheese to me? I think he's certainly tricked the American people there. Some of the comments he came out that we're all very familiar with now in the campaign race about Mexico, building the wall in Mexico, is that presidency quality? Yes, he's a great businessman. We all know he's fantastic. Is he a bully? How did he put himself forward in the campaign against Hillary, talking about the opposite sex, talking about what he's going to do? Is he going to deliver? Do we know that? I mean, what's your view on that, Nigel? You've met the guy. How do you see him?
Yeah. Look, Milan, this is a larger-than-life, huge alpha male figure. I tell you what he is going to do. He's going to bully American companies and make them invest their money here and not to invest the money in Mexico. Is he presidential in terms of the way he behaves and what he says? Do you know the real answer to that is we'll find out.
The Nigel Farage Show, live from Washington, only on LBC.
Tomorrow is the big day here in Washington. Donald J. Trump will swear in at midday as the 45th President of the United States of America. I will be there, up on the dais, not too far away from the action. I'm excited to be here. I'm pleased I took part in the campaign. I know that this man says things that at times upsets people. He speaks his mind. He puts comments out there. But I think his instincts are right. I think he believes in democracy. He believes in a nation state. He believes in standing up for ordinary people, and he believes in the United Kingdom and the American relationship with him. So I'm optimistic. I'm bullish. I think he'll be great for the USA. The question is, what do you think? And we've had a mixture of views so far, and your text, tweets and Facebook messages are piling in. Nigel, I think Donald Trump can revolutionise the economy in the United Kingdom. I want the United Kingdom to go in with the American market. George, we haven't left the EU to become the 51st state. We really haven't, but let's be friends and let's trade. Another anonymous tweet that's come in here. Nigel, he lied throughout the entire campaign. What makes you think he'll be any good? Very interesting. The best comment I heard about the Trump campaign is that you should take him seriously, but not always literally. And I think in many ways that probably is right. OK, let's find out what Fred in Teddington. Fred, I think he's going to be great. What do you think?
Well, my comments will be based on I voted for Brexit, okay? So I'm a friend. And I'm a friend of UKIP, so you need to understand that in view of what I'm going to say, which is on the US thing, Trump is not a clown. But I've studied British economic history going back over the last 300 years and American history, economic history, over 200 years. I'm going to tell you with a really high degree of confidence that at the end of 8 years, assuming you help to get him re-elected in 4 years' time, Mr. Trump will have doubled the value of his properties. Through his $1 trillion investment in infrastructure, he will be a mega-rich man coming out of the presidency. But that will be followed by a financial crisis that will eclipse what happened in 2008, and many millions of Americans are going to lose their homes. And without taking that into account, it's very difficult to arrive at an objective assessment of Trump. But okay, so can I pitch in a warning for UKIP here? Because this is serious. The economic history, Nigel, tells me that in 2 years' time, when Mrs. May is going to ask Parliament to endorse her agreement to come out of the European Union, Britain will be in recession. Now, if I'm right, and I will bet my home that I'm correct, I'm that certain, you know who will get or what will get blamed for that recession. It will be Brexit. Now, if that is the case, you know that there are enemies of Brexit who will use the fact that Britain is in recession in 2 years from now to try and scupper what's going to happen.
Fred, you may be right and you may be wrong. You know, I spent 20 years working in and around commodities and finance and you know, knowing where we're going to be in 2 years' time is difficult. But actually, you know, many of the instincts that Trump has got are similar to the instincts that Ronnie Reagan had 35 years ago, in that he wants to lift the burden of regulation of small and medium-sized businesses. He wants to reduce taxes. America has the highest corporate tax rate in the world. There's $2.5 trillion of American profits sitting all over the world in offshore bank accounts. He wants to repatriate that money. I can't tell you whether the world economy will be going up or down in 2 years' time, but I do think, Fred, that what Trump will succeed in doing is bringing a lot of money and a lot of investment back into the USA. Would you at least agree with that?
Well, I do. No doubt about it. And there will be a boom because of the investment in infrastructure. But Reagan left America the highest debt of any president, and he didn't forestall the following recession that occurred. But the really serious thing from Britain's point of view is, assuming that I'm correct, and as I told you, I will stake my house on me being right, then you will have a huge fight through Brexit to try and recover the Brexit program if Britain is in recession in 2 years' time. And UKIP needs to get prepared for that fight.
Fred, I take your other point about Brexit. On Trump, you know, where I will agree with you is there is going to be a Trump boom. In fact, arguably, there's a Trump boom already going on. Sometimes, you're right, bust can follow boom if it's too excessive. I don't know. You don't know. We will see. I wonder what Adam in Manchester thinks. Adam, do you think Trump is going to be a successful president, or do you think it's dangerous putting him in place tomorrow?
Hi, Nigel. I actually think he's going to be a very dangerous president because, first of all, there's going to be an economic war with China. We all can see that with the import tariffs which are going to be in place. But what concerns me about Trump is actually what's going on in the South China Sea right now. China are building a lot of artificial islands. Philippines are siding with China and Russia. So that goes against U.S. interests. Trump is not going to remain passive in that region. I seriously fear that his sort of protectionist policies are going to contribute to a military war with China in that region. What do you think, Nigel?
Well, Adam, is it reasonable, is it right that China should expand their steel capacity to an absolutely extraordinary level, much of it paid for with state subsidy, and then dump their product on the Western world markets, contributing to the closure of steel mills in South Wales, in the northeast of England, and in, the Midwest states of America? I mean, should we just stand there and allow the Chinese, through state-subsidised industries, to put loads of us out of work? Let me ask you that question.
I absolutely agree with you that what Trump is going to do in terms of tariffs is the right way to go. I agree with his point that America had been sort of fleeced for too long by China. But my concern is, what are the implications of that? Is Trump going to remain passive in that South China Sea with increased militarization of China with their naval force? Or is he going to respond to it? My thing is, my suggestion is he's going to respond to that. And that's going to create a war in that region.
Well, Adam, one thing's for certain, and that is that America's one China policy ends at midday tomorrow. The fact that Trump took a call from the leader of Taiwan effectively means, there is going to be a much more public recognition of the existence and the right to exist of Taiwan. It is a change of policy. You may well be right in that it will upset the Chinese. But actually, Adam, I'm going to say this to you. I think the recognition of Taiwan, the way in which he's going to do it, I think it's the right thing to do. But Adam, you make a very valid point. You do make a valid point that clearly relations with China are not going to be the same. And I thank you for that point and for the call. I wonder what Simon in Basingstoke thinks. Simon, is Trump good news or bad news?
I think Trump could potentially be the saviour of the West. I have one concern about Donald Trump, and that is that Donald Trump will actually be alive to undertake all these policies that he's already stated. The wealth that he will put at risk and the power that he will put at risk by following through these policies, and the fact that this is a man who's immensely personally wealthy, and so he's not subject to bribery like most politicians, means that his assassination would be of enormous benefit to a large number of interests, everyone from the Chinese to Walmart. And so I just hope that he has good security.
Oh, can I tell you, Simon, the security here is just astonishing. So this morning, I went to do a live interview on Fox TV, and they've got a balcony that they're filming from that overlooks directly the White House. So, for pretty obvious reasons, you can understand why security might be tight. It took me between 15 and 20 minutes to get into the building. I had to be assessed by the Secret Service. Believe you me, the levels of security that are being put in place here for tomorrow are extraordinary. They even go so far as we're not allowed to take umbrellas tomorrow, and the forecast is for persistent rain. So there are going to be quite a lot of people tomorrow looking like drowned rats. Simon, all I can say is I guess there is always assassination risk. It's happened, of course, in America too often in the past. But I think he will be the best protected president there's probably ever been in history. Facebook messages, Sally Marie says, Obama has left us with the greatest debt. Well, actually, Sally Marie, Obama increased debt in America, just as George Osborne massively increased debts across the United Kingdom. And very interesting that the Chinese dimension was raised in this part of the programme. Relations with China are going to be different. Relations with Russia are going to be different. Relations with the European Union are going to be different. America tomorrow changes fundamentally. It is a democratic revolution. Coming up, I'll give you my final thoughts on Mr. Trump. But right now, you've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively here on LBC, live from Washington, D.C. It's 7:45. Love him or hate him, it's happening. Trump becomes president tomorrow. He swears in at midday. I'm going to be up there on the platform watching it. I'm excited about it. I think he's going to be good news. I think he could become a great president. A lot of people have very strongly opposing views. And please keep calling me, particularly if you disagree with me. 0345 6060 973, and keep the Facebook messages and the tweets and the texts coming. Let's go to our first caller after the break. It is Brianna in Slough. Good evening.
Hello, Nigel. It is really, really good to talk to you. I'm a big fan of yours and all that you've done. I really like how you really strive for what you believe in, and you've fought for that. So that is something that I've always appreciated when I've watched you. I'm an American currently living in the UK, and so I've had to deal with visas, with being non-EU, with a lot of the problems that comes along with that. And I've always felt that here in the UK it's very, very difficult for us who are non-EU trying to be here. Now, I didn't actually vote for Trump. I voted the other way. But I thoroughly believe in democracy. And that's one of the things that if America is voting for Trump and if very much the UK is voting for Brexit, I believe that that's the direction we should be taking. And so I do get upset at many of Americans and many people here in the UK, especially those who don't have a full understanding of the political system in the US and the way that the government works and the House and the Senate, all of that, then claiming how awful Trump is. If America wants Trump, that is their right to vote for Trump. That is their right to have that, and I support that. I'm very, very hopeful that Trump is the right step for America. Might not have been the step that I personally would have taken, but if that's the step that they want, then I think they deserve to have that. And I think that's a step in the right direction. Does that make sense?
Well, Brenna, I always respect people that ring up and say, I was on the other side, but I accept the result. And you know something? 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't have even had this conversation because that would have been a given. And yet, what we've had since Brexit, with leading politicians and some public figures wanting effectively to reverse the vote, and what we're seeing with some of these protests that are taking place in Washington, are people who simply can't get their heads around 2016. They can't accept the degree to which things have changed. You, Brianna, are a true Democrat, and you can, and I thank you. I'm going to go next to Scotland. And don't forget, Trump is half Scottish. Trump's mum was Scottish. She was from the Western Isles. She was, in fact, a Gaelic speaker. And Trump speaks incredibly fondly of her. He certainly has spoken to me fondly of Scotland, its countryside. He's got investments, of course, in Scotland. And we're going next to Nicholas, who is in East Ayrshire. Nicholas, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Absolute pleasure speaking to you, sir. I tell you what the point is. I was listening to the show earlier and how you went through being vilified, Donald Trump being vilified. Then I was sitting thinking to myself, each and every main political party in our country, in the Great Britain, from the Labour, from the Conservatives to the Lib Dems to the Greens to the SNP, slated their own British people for Brexit, calling them misogynists, calling them Islamophobics. And I'm sitting going, at least Donald Trump protects us as Americans, citizens. He's looking after the Americans. He didn't call them names. He wasn't you didn't say you're all deplorables if you vote Hillary.
No, well, wasn't that, Nicholas, wasn't that a moment? You know, when Hillary said, and half of Donald Trump supporters are what I would put in the basket of deplorables. And it had an echo, because I remember on LBC 7 or 8 years ago, when David Cameron was leading the Conservative Party, and Nick Ferrari on The Breakfast Show said to Cameron, well, what about UKIP? They appear to be doing quite well with Nigel leading them. And he said, UKIP, oh, well, they're just a bunch of eccentrics, fruitcakes and closet racists mostly. And all that Cameron did by saying that was to make fair-minded people really, really angry, and to, I think, in fact, to increase support for UKIP. And I think people calling Trump supporters, or those inclined to Trump, a deplorable, probably helped him too. As a Scot, Nicholas, do you think it's a pretty good thing that a half Scot is going to be the President of America?
I think it's fantastic. I'm a patron of UKIP, and I just wish UKIP would do a lot more in Scotland, because I think there's a lot more support up here in Scotland than what you think it is. I know you had a hard time the last time you were up in Edinburgh. I remember seeing Glasgow at the grassroots. But I really think we need to get a new party. I hope Aaron Banks comes out with something, or you come out with something. But I'm really...
Well, Nicholas, we will talk about the future of British politics another evening. Thank you. But it is interesting that Donald Trump considers himself to be 50% British, which is a lot more than Nicola Sturgeon does. OK, your messages. Facebook message from Mike. Following Bush and Obama, he hasn't got much to beat. Joking aside, he will be a breath of fresh air, precisely why the old establishment hate both him and you. Trump has the right attitude and policies to make America great again. I'm sure he'll be a great friend of Britain. Nigel, Trump is no Ronald Reagan. Reagan advocated the destruction of trade barriers and free markets. Trump, in relation to China and Mexico, is a protectionist. That is true. There is a fundamental difference between Reaganomics and Trumponomics today. You're right, and really, it is about China, it is about Mexico, it is about a different and a new world. But I wonder, back to the callers, what Andrew in Docklands thinks. Andrew, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Yeah, my thought was there was a caller about 20 minutes ago who just gave a litany of complaints about Donald Trump and said he was going to push the button and create a nuclear war. And I just think, well, it seems like these people have just read liberal newspapers. They haven't bothered reading Donald Trump's book. If they could borrow it from the library, Art of the Deal, I wish I'd read that when it first came out in '86. I would not have made half of the mistakes I'd made in my business. And I read plenty of books at the time. And I just think, the people who think that they want a businessman, why wouldn't you want a successful businessman in charge of the economy? Why would you want a politician, a lawyer like, Obama was? What do they know about business? They're not commercial lawyers. They're not people. They're not trained in it. They know nothing. Neither did Clinton. Any of these people, the Bushes, they were oil people. They didn't know how to start a business from nothing and build it up. And that's what I think Trump is going to be very, very good at. I've got my arguments with him. I follow the Austrian School of Economics, and I've got just as many arguments with him. But I think in what he's doing in the big government context, I think he'll be really good at it.
Well, Andrew, I agree with that, and I think we've been run for too long by career politicians who've never had jobs in the real world, have got absolutely no connection with the way things work, wouldn't have a clue about international trade and other issues like that. And I think it's not just Trump. Look at the team around him, Andrew. He's appointed some seriously successful people to big jobs running the US economy, running the US's new trade policy. And your other point, Andrew, that I want to pick up on is you're right. People say, oh, it's awful. Because of Trump, there'll be a war. Someone said earlier he might just sort of trip over and press the nuclear button. The neocon, the aggressor in this election was Hillary Clinton, not Trump, whose instincts are non-interventionist and who has already said he wants to try and sit in a room with Putin to reduce the number of nuclear weapons that exist in the world. Andrew, thank you very much indeed for your call. And probably our last call this evening is going to be Emma in Nottingham. Emma, what do you think of Trump?
I haven't got a lot of good stuff to say about him, to be honest. I completely disagree with you regarding Trump. I mean, you just spoke earlier about career politicians not having a job in the real world, and Trump's never really had a job in the real world, has he? He got a nice £1 million investment off his dad and has used that to become bankrupt 6 times. If he'd put it in a post office account, he'd be richer now than if he'd, with all his dealings. I think he's an appalling man. I think he's divided a nation that he will never be able to reunite again.
Well, that's a strong view, Emma, and you're not alone in feeling that. There are many that hate him. There are many that can't stand the things that he said. But Emma, right or wrong, he's won. He becomes the 45th president of the United States of America tomorrow. It is going to happen. And I thank you for your call. I thank everybody for all of their calls that we've had this evening. And my final thought on all of this is that when you make a big change, then necessarily risk comes with it. And yes, a whole team of people are taking over who've never been in elected politics before. But the old order wasn't working. It wasn't working for ordinary Americans, and it was leading them and us into too many needless foreign military interventions. I think this is a whole different approach. It's an approach that will suit our country. It'll be an opportunity for us to strike out and do trade deals. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be huge. I wish him well. I'm pleased I'm going to be there. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show, live from Washington, D.C. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins. But next up, it's Clive Bull.